Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a rather obscure pen reel. This is the Penn Powergraph II 7000. It probably around 2000 or so, I believe it would be introduced. The reel was made in China, and it's what I would call a value reel by Penn's Propositions. It was an entry-level reel. It replaced the Silver Series kind of reel, and got good value for the money. Single ball bearing in a nice format, and we're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, and how to keep it fishing. This one belongs to Salvatore, and it's a beautiful reel. It's been well kept in nice condition, and we're just going to tune it up, make sure that it's ready to go fishing so that he can go catch a lot of fish with it. We're going to start by removing the handle. The handle comes off in a counterclockwise manner, and as we take away the exterior parts, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please hit that notification button. That'll tell you when I'm posting videos, and you can take a look at them, see if that's one that you want to watch. There's videos on big saltwater reels like this. There's videos on freshwater reels, bait casters, low profile and round, and of course spinning reels, everything from pond reels all the way up to the bigger saltwater reels. So I would encourage you to do that, subscribe, and I thank you very much to all of the folks that have subscribed. Well, I'm just going to take a moment while I have this rotor here. I'm going to oil the seams of the bail rotor and the line roller, and you don't need to do anything with that bail other than work it in, unless of course you're having an issue. If you're having an issue where it's not tripping or something like that, then go ahead and take that off. But a lot of folks just take it off thinking that there's something to be serviced under. There really isn't. It's just a group of springs, and the springs can go out without greasing and oiling. Here's a look at the top end of the reel. It has the old classic anti-reverse dog. That's going to intersect with ridges in the bottom of this rotor. And when it's pointed out like that, it's going to catch the ridge and stop it from backpedaling. And then you have an override on this one, where when you move the switch, it's going to pull that tongue in, and then enable you to backpedal the reel if you like. The only thing I'm going to do here is take this collar off, which has that little eccentric and spring. Notice the orientation of that. You have a kind of a conical type of a piece here. That goes down, the hook is up, and you want to do that because we're going to want to get to removing that single ball bearing. On this side then, we're going to remove the 4 screws, and another thing that you can note here is that the removal of the side plate, I believe, is going to come off independent of the top. You always want to check that so that you know whether you have to take the rotor off or not. Now, we just took the rotor off just because it was convenient, but in some cases you have to take that rotor off in order to remove the side plate. You would do it the same way. You would remove that click ratchet and the shim washer, and then pull the rotor cup by removing the rotor nut, and that would enable you to get that top end off so that you could get the side plate off. In this case, I think we have a seam on it. Well, you'll notice I'm letting the screws fall to my table here. I want to make sure that all of those screws are the same. If they're not, I want to mark the location of the longer screw or the shorter screw. In this case, all 4 of those screws are the same, so it doesn't matter what order they go back in. Let's remove the side plate then and show you how this reel is made. It's a well, it says Powergraph, so we're going to take it as a graphite. There's a shim here that belongs on the main gear. Behind that is a bushing, and there's a second shim here as well. The factory uses those shims to get the right alignment of the main gear to the pinion gear. Sometimes you'll find 1, maybe 2 like we just found here, and on a rare occasion you'll find 3. And that's because the parts have a little bit of a difference in the being in spec or tolerance, and that shim takes up the space to stop it from kind of wobbling. I get a lot of questions that come in My reel was working fine before I did the service. I took it apart and I cleaned it and I reassembled, and now I've got to grind. Well, a lot of times that grind is that they didn't put back the shim washers, or they put them back incorrectly. All right, we've just removed the axle shaft. Now I'm going to remove the crosswind block. And it looks like this reel has been serviced. You can tell it's nice and clean, so maybe it's not even sure if it's serviced. Maybe it's just original grease. It doesn't look like it's been fished. Not much indication of anything on the spool other than dust from possible storage. But we want to do our best. We want to clean all the pieces and parts, get the old greases out of the channels. And if you're wondering where all those pieces and parts are going, they're going into a parts tray. I use a parts tray to keep track of my what I take off so that I know where to put it back together. Time to take the main gear out, you simply pull that out. Then we have one more piece that we're going to remove here. We're going to remove the crosswind gear. That should come off just by pulling up. And I want to grab it by the stud because I don't want to grab it by the teeth. All right, this is the next part of the reel service. It's simply getting rid of the old grease and then refreshing the grease. So I'm going to use a Q-tip. And these are Q-tips, not cotton swabs. There you go. So I can actually say I'm using a Q-tip here. But regardless, I like them because they can get into the nooks and crannies of the reel and help you clean that out. I'll use a paper towel just to wipe that down further. And you want to get as much of that grease out of there as you can because it's old. It may have contaminants in it. It may be setting you up for failure later if it had sand in there, for example. So do your best to kind of clean it out. That's a pretty good job there. All right, got the same thing here. We got some of the old grease kind of on the back of the crosswind gear, so let's take care of that. And you'll see I wear a latex glove, and I do that just for that reason, to keep all the greases and that off of my fingers, because I never know what's in there. We have one more set here. This kind of tells you that it's been used. Looks like centrifugal force has just driven all of the old grease to the kind of the center of the main gear and away from the teeth. And of course, when it gets there, it has very little lubrication value. That's not a moving part in the center there. And it just kind of accumulates. And that's where if you swamp a reel or something that you run into trouble. All right, well, the only other thing we need to do is remove the main bearing and the pinion gear and just make sure that gets serviced and cleaned up as well. There's only 2 screws. There's not a collar on this one, which is why I was able to leave this anti-reverse dog in place. You just have a screw with a broad head on it. And that broad head acts as a clamp against the 2 sides of the bearing. It's a good place to tell you to take pictures along the way. If you're struggling with the reel, if you're not sure of what the reel is, if you haven't worked on the reel before, then pictures are a great assist when it comes time to reinstall. So go ahead and do that. The bearing looks new. We're going to oil the bearing. I'm just going to flood it. It's a shielded bearing. It's not a sealed bearing. So I'm just going to lay a nice coating of oil on there, let that seep in. We're going to clean the pinion gear then. First I'm going to wipe off any excess, and then I'm going to use a hard brush to pull through to get the old greases out of there. I'm going to use a paper towel underneath it to trap the greases that I'm pulling out so that it doesn't go on my bench and doesn't stay on the pinion gear as it gets clean. So that's a good indication. That one more wipe there. That's nice and clean. We'll go ahead and take that bearing, put that back on. Now we're going to grease it up. I'm going to use Penn Precision Wheel Grease. That's the blue grease that I use. And that's available online, and most sporting goods stores will carry it. I use a large container because I'm always doing fishing reels, but they sell them in a 2-ounce convenient pack with oil and grease. and I do recommend that you use fishing reel grease and oil when you service your reels. We just put the assembly back into the case. I'm going to take the first of the 2 screws and put that one back in. And while I'm doing that, if you have any question on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one, you've encountered a little bit of a problem, or maybe there's a feature or a function of a reel you don't quite understand, well, if I can help you out, I'll try. I don't know it all. I don't pretend to know it all. But if I can help you with it, I'll give it a try. Just leave it in the comment section. I do try to answer those in the mornings, and I'll try to get you off on the right way. All right, we have that main gear now. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to get some grease onto the back here. That's going to drive the oscillation gear. You want to get some onto the stem, which is going to ride inside the bushing. You want to get a good amount on the teeth. You don't have to get it in every tooth and every slot. That will spread around. Your pinion gear is a smaller diameter than your main gear, which is what we're working on. And just by spinning, it'll spread it all the way around there. Before I put that one in, I want to get that oscillation gear, do the same thing. We want to grease up the oscillation gear. That gets grease on all 3 sides. Kind of a workhorse. It's sliding along on the back of the case, that's why you get grease there. It's intersecting with the back end of the main gear, this piece here. That's why you grease the teeth. And your crosswind block, well, that's sliding on the face of it. Take that and make sure that it gets inserted onto the post. That post does have a brass ring on it, so make sure that that ring is in there. Once the crosswind gear is in, seat the stud to the lower portion of that. I guess we can go ahead and put the block in at the moment. It's just a good thing to do before we forget about it. A little bit of grease in the slot, a little bit of grease on the face. Make sure that the block gets seated where the stud is inside the slot that we just put the gear in, grease in. Take that main gear, insert that. Now we know we have the 2 shim washers there, so let's make sure. And oh, in this case, wow, we got a whole stack of shim washers. So this one, I guess it looks like there's 4. This might have the most shim washers I've seen, which kind of says something is pushing the tolerances there. I'll clean off the bushing. A little bit of grease onto the stud so that it rides freely in the bushing. And now we can come back up here and we can service the top. We've already done the bearing. We can put a drop of oil or 2 onto the anti-reverse. Let's take the rotor and put the rotor on. There's 2 flat sides of that pinion gear. Make sure that you've, that's an oops. Before I do that, there's the conical piece we were talking about. That's the joy of having your parts tray. You can notice when you go to do something, there are a lot of pieces in there, and I don't remember putting it on, but I know it goes on. Go ahead and do it there. All right, now we're going to put the rotor nut back on. I'm going to tighten that up with a box wrench. And then we can take our axle shaft. We want to make sure that it's cleaned off. And we want to give it a light coating of grease. Don't put too much on there, only because when you slide it through the pinion gear here, it's just going to scrape off the excess. Have the flat side of the axle shaft out so that you can slide that and mate it to your crosswind gear and block. We have 2 flat screws holding that down. Notice I didn't say spin that rotor. Spin the rotor, you're going to move that crosswind block out of place. And well, in some cases, at least on this one, you have an anti-reverse override. But if you do that on a Penn Fierce or a Penn Pursuit, for example, You're going to trap that crosswind block up behind the main gear, and it's going to be nothing but a problem. Most of the time you wind up breaking the gear because you don't have that anti-reverse override. All right, we're going to put the 2 flathead screws into the reel. And we're getting pretty close to the point where we can test it. So what have we done so far? Well, we've disassembled the reel. Kind of explained a little bit about the features and functions. We made sure it was clean. We found there's a lot of old grease in there. And took the time to clean it, to re-lube it. Well, and now it's just a matter of just putting it back together. Take that side plate now. That side plate should just snap on nice and easily. I am kind of surprised that we have that many shim washers in this. But we do. And it's sort of like if you were buying a tire and they went to mount the tire and they were going to put all kinds of lead balancing pieces on it. I think you probably would say, you know, find me another tire, because it's sort of asking for trouble. It's kind of saying that the tire or the rim is out of balance pretty seriously to begin with. All right, we're going to go crosswise. To make it like a big X, we're going to go high and then go low on that tangent. Come back and do it on the other one. And then we'll show you how to service the spool. We'll give it a final test. And you will have learned how to do the Penn Powergraph 7000 version number 2 if you have one of these. Also, if you have one of these, this kind of applies to every Powergraph. They all are kind of the same engineering, just pieces are bigger. Go ahead and put the handle back on. But yeah, if you have a 4000, if you have a 5000 series, whatever it is, you shouldn't have an issue taking the sequence and the process that I am doing and using it for that. I have the last 2 pieces I have in my parts tray is the click ratchet. That's going to make the noise from the click tongue under here, this little piece. It's going to beat it, and that's when your spool is going in reverse. And then we're going to take this retaining spring out. And I'm guessing we're going to have felt washers in here, but I'm not sure. Oh, this one's been changed up. Good. This one's got a Teflon washer for the first one. Now it doesn't want to come out, but it doesn't have to come out. It's just a plain Teflon washer. It's plastic. It doesn't get lubrication. There we go. Got it out. I'll just clean out the cavity just for fun. But it's a plastic one. It's self-lubricating. It's a petrochemical product. That goes in. And then we have HT100 drags in here, so that's good. There's 2 round ones with a rectangular center. Those are called keyed washers. One goes on the bottom, one goes on the top. These are HT100 drag washers. Maybe that's why Powergraph 2 is different from Powergraph 1. We have the top HT100. Those can go dry or those can go with lubrication. That's your choice. I'm going to run these dry. And we'll just grab that retaining clip. Put that in. Then lock down the spring. This is not a heavy spring, so you can generally get this one in with finger pressure. There we go. Make sure that it seats into the groove. All right, ready to line this and get this on. Take our star adjuster button. We'll tighten this down. We'll check, make sure everything's working. We'll get this one back out to Salvatore to go take fishing. I'll tighten up the drag, make sure that it's working. Here's that click we were talking about. That's that click ratchet and tongue working. Let's give it a ride. That's a nice smooth wheel. This one has not had a lot of use. You can tell that internally and externally. We had the anti-reverse off. Let's make sure that that's working. It is. That's where the beak of the anti-reverse dog is hitting the part of the rotor. Make sure that our bail works. It does. All right, so there's your Penn Powergraph II 7000 sized reel. That's how to take it apart, service it, and get it out there fishing again. So I hope you've appreciated that. To all of our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do. To everybody, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.